Please welcome Whitley O'Connor. Hi, Whitley.
Thank you. I've loved business for as long as I can remember. Most of my earliest memories revolve around some type of hustle. And this was before the days of the side hustle. I'm talking about mowing lawns, selling baseball cards, really anything I could do to make a buck. In fact, once my parents told me that being a Red Power Ranger wasn't a real career, I decided I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I was drawn to the creativity, the innovation, the problem solving. And what can I say? From the beginning, I just loved capitalism. But as I got older, I started to see some problems, some flaws, some dents and dings in my beloved model. I saw people being left behind. I'm talking about folks like those who are in poverty, minorities, individuals living with disabilities. I'd always thought of capitalism as a great equalizer, but I started to see that not everyone had the same opportunities as I had enjoyed. I kind of started to feel like I had been duped, that capitalism and I were at a crossroads. But I'm not here today to talk about the ills of capitalism, so don't tune out quite yet. I will talk about some of my qualms, however. I'm here to make a case for capitalism and how it can be fixed, some adjustments that need to be made. Today, I'm going to talk about why I think capitalism is uniquely suited to address social needs, why it's broken, and what we can do to fix it. I call it Capitalism 2.0. So let's first talk about capitalism. I call it the 3 S's of capitalism. When you think of a business, typically you think about 3 things: solutions, it's scalable, it's sustainable. So let's start with solutions. A lot of people think that businesses are just meant to make money, that that's the underlying cause. But the reality is that very few businesses actually start to make money. The truth is, they start to solve a problem, to meet an unmet need. Before McDonald's was a global food empire, it was a single restaurant. They were serving quick, cheap burgers. At their core, businesses are there to fit market gaps. And that's what nonprofits do. They fit unmet needs. But unlike market needs, they fill social needs. Whether you're talking about food, shelter, clothing, animal adoption, they're all designed to meet gaps left in our community, to build on the health and well-being. Scalability. The idea of a business, at its core, if it works for one, it should be able to grow, right? If your business is viable, you can increase it by 10, 20, 100-fold. It's the idea of economies of scale. The more of something you buy, the cheaper it gets. That's why if you go to buy a can of soda, you may spend 75 cents, but when you go to buy a 12-pack, it might be $4 or 33 cents a can. The same is true whether you're buying ingredients at a restaurant or materials to make a product. Now again, let's apply this to the social service world. Imagine the ability to scale an idea in the same way that McDonald's scaled. Imagine if we could address homelessness this way, if you will. If you could house 10 individuals experiencing homelessness, theoretically, you could house 100, 1,000, maybe even end homelessness. And last, sustainability. Is the organization fiscally sound? Is it making a profit? At the end of the day, this is the bottom line, right? If the business isn't financially sound, it can't keep its doors open. And again, this is much like a nonprofit. The difference is nonprofits don't have a revenue stream intrinsically in their model, right? They rely on grants, they rely on donations. Unfortunately, they're often competing against each other for those resources, and those resources are what limit their ability to increase the clients they serve. So imagine if we could take the idea of sustainability for capitalism and apply it to nonprofits. We could address so many more needs, serve so many more clients. Now that I've explained capitalism, and why it's a useful tool for addressing these social issues, I want to talk about those qualms I mentioned. I know I said I wouldn't talk too much about social ills, but I want to talk a little bit about what I see as a problem so we can talk about what needs to be addressed. Business is booming, but our homeless crisis nationally continues to grow. The stock market is at an all-time high, but so is our mental illness crisis. We continue to see employment go down and incarceration rates go up, way up. We're the #1 incarcerator in the world, right? In my opinion, capitalism has gotten off track. It's lost its way. In this never-ending quest to increase profit margins, to increase stock prices, I feel that we need to take a second and look at what that has done. So tuition. It's no mystery that tuition rates are increasing. But when you look at it, over the past 30 years, public institutions have more than tripled their tuition rates. Private institutions, like the one I was fortunate enough to get a scholarship to, have more than doubled. Healthcare spending. Healthcare has increased by more than 5 times over the past 50 years. Do you know that the creator of insulin, sold the patent for a mere $1? He wanted to make sure that everyone who needed this life-saving medication had access to it. And unfortunately for Mr. Banting, insulin in America now costs $300 a vial, more than 10 times the cost our neighbors to the north in Canada pay. Housing. Housing has increased more than twice since my grandparents bought their first home, and by more than 60% since my parents bought theirs. Housing prices continue to go up and up and up. I could go on and on. It doesn't matter what we talk about, cars, movie tickets, you name a cost, the prices look the same. Steady, steep increase upwards. And remember, all of these costs are price adjusted. They're adjusted for inflation. It's apples to apples comparison, right? So you must be thinking, all of these costs are going up. How can people afford that? Surely their wages are following, right? Not quite. Wages have remained stagnant for the past 50 years. 50 years. Now, that's not quite true for everyone, though. When we look at CEO to worker compensation, we see the familiar graph that we saw before, right? A steady, steep increase. Now, if you take the top 10% of earners out of that previous graph of wage stagnation, you actually see a slight decline. You see the incomes are actually going down. So what does this mean? It means that for the first time in the history of our country, we have a generation that will be less financially sound than their parents. I know many of you in the crowd today are probably parents. I want that to sit for a second. We all want to leave this planet better for our kids, for our grandkids. Statistically, that will not be the case. If you're like me and you're born after 1984, more than 50% of us will not make more than our parents. Now, what is the end result of this? Well, out-of-control tuition costs lead to talent gaps, right? Rising healthcare costs have led the U.S. to be one of the least healthy countries in the world. Rising housing costs are the #1 cause of homelessness across the country. Now, I don't want to just be a Debbie Downer. I don't like talking about problems without solutions, so I came today to offer one, and it's called social enterprise. Earlier, I talked about the 3 S's of capitalism, and when you boil it down, typically when we talk about business, you talk about a bottom line, and that's profit. When you talk about social enterprise, however, there's a triple bottom line: people, planet, profit. Social enterprises focus more than just money. They believe that to be a successful business, you have to be socially responsible. So let's take a look at what that means. People. With any company, people are your biggest assets. You heard that earlier today. People are the economic engine behind any business. And what social enterprises do is they recognize that if you want your company to be healthy, your workers have to be healthy too. Issues like homelessness, food insecurity, mental illness, those all drive down productivity for a company. They recognize that the health and well-being of their company is tied to the health and well-being of their workforce. That's why triple bomb businesses advocate for fair, ethical, and equitable labor practices and wages. And what about the planet? Whether it's carbon emissions, glacial melting, deforestation, our planet's in a lot of trouble. And if we're honest, capitalism has been one of the main drivers behind that. That's why social enterprises strive to be better, to reduce their impact on the planet. Rather than leaving governments and individuals to clean up the mess, social enterprises understand that the environmental impact they leave, the toxins, the waste, the carbon emissions, are part of the price of doing business. And profit, back to our old friend. Although social enterprise has a little bit of a different feel to it, at the end of the day, they also look at profit. How sound is the model? How sustainable is it? Now, you might ask, what does this look like in action, right? How can you possibly make money? Raise your hand if you've heard of a company named Patagonia. Anyone heard of Patagonia? Let's talk about Patagonia. Patagonia is a $400 million a year business, right? They do what's called social audits of all of their fair trade factories abroad. They go abroad every single year, they go to their factories, they make sure that their workers are in good conditions, that they're paid fairly, and that child labor isn't used. Not only that, in the United States, they offer on-campus subsidized childcare, and they pay 100% of your healthcare premiums for both full-time and part-time employees. Now, that's what I call being good to your people. Now, when it comes to the planet, I think everyone knows that Patagonia is a leader when it comes to both the materials they use as well as their advocacy. They use chemical-free cotton, and their fleece is actually made from recycled plastics. Now, to be fair, Patagonia openly admits that they're not carbon neutral. They actually publish something called the Footprint Chronicles on their website, where you can see every single piece of merchandise and the exact footprint it's making. And that's okay that they're not carbon neutral. Because social enterprise is not about perfection. It's about being better to your employees, your planet, and the people around you. Now that's what I call being good to the planet. Now profit. Again, Patagonia is not a small fish. It's a $400 million a year industry, and the founder is worth an estimated $1 billion. See, you don't have to go broke to be socially responsible. One thing that many social enterprises embrace is giving back a portion of their profits. And Patagonia is no different. They were a founder of what's called 1% for the Planet, a conglomerate of companies that give back at least 1% of their sales annually to environmental causes. And you know the most amazing part about this? Every time Patagonia announces a new initiative, whether it's an employee improvement initiative, whether it's a new environmental step that they're taking, their sales go up. And there's a lot of research to support why that is. 90% of consumers say that they're willing to trade products, trade brands, in order to support a company that's more socially responsible. 66% of consumers say that not only are they willing to jump, they're willing to pay more to do it. So not only is it good, but it pays to be good. So what's the takeaway here? What is all this about? And that's the best part to me, because all of you can start today on reshaping capitalism to work for everyone. You see, capitalism is driven by consumers, by market fluctuations, by changes in revenue. That's how it responds. The way I think of capitalism is, I think of it as a democracy. Right? And that might sound a little weird. Some people, especially my generation, might think that that's crazy. But like I said, it responds to consumers. So like a democracy, instead of voting with a ballot, you vote with your wallet. And here's a great example of that. Who's heard of the company Honest Tea? Anyone? In the mid-2000s, a fair trade company, organic tea company, popped up called Honest Tea. And they began taking a big share of the market. They began selling their teas globally and gas stations and supermarkets all over the world. And Coca-Cola took notice that they were competing with their own brands. And in 2008, Coca-Cola invested in the company. And in 2011, they bought them outright. Under one condition, though, they had to maintain their fair trade and organic standards in order to make that purchase. And since making that purchase, they have done that. They've maintained the triple bottom line of Honest Tea. And with the resources of Coke, Honest Tea has exploded. They've been able to offer more employment to fair trade farms across the world. They've been able to drive down their environmental impact with those resources. Consumers saw a better, more socially responsible product on the market. They voted with their wallet, and one of the largest companies in the world responded. Now, for you all who are in leadership positions and your companies, what I want you to think about is, how can your company be better? Are you hiring second chance employees? Are you looking at ways to reduce your carbon footprint? Are you investing in organizations that matter in the community? The last thing I want you all to hear one more time is that social enterprise and the triple bottom line isn't about perfection. It's about being better. So starting today, I challenge you all to leave here and be better. Thank you.